As we start a new session of the legislature, we as Democrats want to take this opportunity to share with you our vision of how we can get Montana back on track. For the past few years, folks have been paying much more and getting much less. It's harder to make ends meet, to raise a family, and to keep living in the communities we love. Voters have been telling us loud and clear that things are not right and we need to get to work and fix them. That isn't right that the ultra-wealthy have more than ever before, but working folks are scrambling to find childcare, sorry about that, or get insurance to cover their medication. We hear them, and we're ready to get to work. Today, you'll hear from about many concrete pieces of legislation that the members of my caucus and Senator Flowers' caucus are bringing to make the lives easier for working Montanans. From lowering property taxes, to making housing more affordable, to strengthening our public schools, to providing better health care, we're ready to get to work. The Montana that you and I have known for so long is built on the strong foundation laid out by our state constitution. The rights and freedoms that the Constitution protects are vital to the prosperity of our communities, and as we erode those freedoms, all the other work that we'll do here will build those things back off of shaky ground. That's why the Democrats in this room here today are committed to defending our constitutional rights. From the right to privacy, the right to hold our government accountable, we will fight every day to protect the freedoms that make our state the best state in this country. We're ready to get to work with anyone who wants to work with us. We will advance those priorities, and our first priority will always be to make life easier for everyday Montanans. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to Representative Howell to talk more about Dem legislation to get things back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Representative S.J. Howell. I represent House District 100 in Missoula. Let's talk about priorities. As many of you already know, one of our top priorities this session is to renew Montana's current Medicaid program. Our adult Medicaid program covers almost 80,000 Montanans, nearly all of whom are working, going to school, or taking care of a loved one full-time. Most folks don't use Medicaid for long, but the time that they do use on the program can change their lives. Folks get healthy, they find better work, they finish their degrees, they help a loved one live out their senior years in dignity. And without action from this legislature, those 80,000 Montanans will be left without health care, with skyrocketing bills, with prescriptions they can't fill, and doctor's visits they can't attend. We have to extend this program, but lifting the sunset is the floor, not the ceiling. It is truly the least we can do. Over the last year and a half, we've watched over 135,000 Montanans get kicked off their Medicaid health coverage, many because of bureaucratic reasons. There was too much red tape, applications that didn't arrive, applications that were cumbersome, and hours spent on hold on a helpline that folks could not actually get help from. Democrats are bringing a bill not just to extend our current Medicaid program, but to make it work better for the folks who need it. We're going to reopen offices of public assistance, especially in rural communities, so folks can get help in person instead of having to wait hours on the phone. We will force Governor Gianforte's administration to cut the red tape for everyday Montanans and make it easier for people to access the care that they need and that they're eligible for. Our bill will hold our government accountable to the hundreds of thousands of Montanans, including children, who have had too many hoops to jump through lately just to stay healthy. We're also bringing a bill that will strengthen Medicaid and our full healthcare system. Many folks might remember last session our fight to increase the rates that the state pays to healthcare providers, the Medicaid rates specifically. That too was the beginning, not the end. Over the last few years, healthcare costs, like everything else, have continued to go up, and we need to stop making this a fight every session about those rates and settle the issue once and for all. Our bill will tie Medicaid rates to inflation so that as costs go up, Medicaid reimbursements go up as well. This will help keep rural hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes open, and it'll help doctors, therapists, dentists continue to keep accepting clients. We also know that everyone deserves health insurance and health coverage that works better and is easier to use, not just Montanans covered by Medicaid. So we have some bills to address the entire healthcare system as well. One of those bills will lower the barriers that prior authorization can unnecessarily put in the way of people getting the care that they need. In addition, we want to address the critical part of healthcare that is mental and behavioral health care. Folks may have heard a lot of recommendations from the Behavioral Health Systems Commission. Not all of those recommendations are funded, and the ones that are have one-time only funding. We have a big question about that, and that question is, what happens when the funding is gone? Democrats' answer is that we want to bring a permanent, sustainable source for funding for community-based behavioral health care. We know the state needs this. You can see it in every community we've got. We're proposing to create a trust fund that generates interest now and into the future to sustain communities' efforts to expand access to care and intervene before situations become crises. We have all of these priorities because we know that better health care is one component to making life easier for Montanans. Another equally important component is affordable housing. Since the last session, again, housing costs have continued to go up and up and up. It's making it harder for people to buy a home and for renters to find a place to live, and it's exacerbating our growing challenge of homelessness. Democrats are bringing bills to strengthen Montanans' path to homeownership, starting by increasing the supply of housing. We still have a supply and demand problem that is pushing up housing costs for everyone. The Cole Trust Multifamily Homes Program is a proven tool to build quality housing in communities across the state, but it's oversubscribed and needs more funding. Democrats are going to give it that funding. We've also seen mobile homeowners who rent the land under their homes getting taken advantage of more and more by big, out-of-state corporate landlords who swoop in and drive up costs. We have a bill to restore the balance between the folks who live in mobile home parks and the landlords so that Montanans aren't driven out of their homes by corporate greed. Democrats also want to make it easier to be a renter. At least a third of Montanans rent their homes, and frankly, that third of Montanans have been neglected and ignored by the legislatures of the past. We want to make sure that renters benefit from property tax relief because, of course, renters are paying property tax in their rent. We want to return the hundreds of dollars that renters often have to pay in application fees to find a place to live. And we want to make sure that landlords don't eat up their security deposits with baseless fees when renters move out. We also want to support those landlords that are trying to help address our housing crisis by renting below market rate, by giving them a tax credit to ensure that that remains an affordable option. Finally, the harder it is to find housing in our communities, the more people who become homeless. No housing plan will be complete without tackling this challenge, because every Montanan deserves to know they'll have a safe place to sleep at night. We're bringing a bill to help address the barriers that force people out of their homes and keep them from finding a new one, and invest in rapid solutions to getting folks into homes. All of these investments are ones that will keep our community members safe, save our community's money, and ultimately save Montanans' lives. I'd be happy to dive into more detail on any of these bills during questions, but for now, I'll hand it over to Shane.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Did want to invite our Indian Caucus members up here to stand with me, because I think it's pretty impressive that Montana has such great representation across the state from our Indian communities across Montana. Want to thank SJ for the comments that they just made, and want to thank all of you for coming this morning. Montana Democrats are, I believe, the party that's clearly dedicated to delivering for Indian country this session and all prior sessions that I've been a part of. As Native people, we understand the value of resilient communities and sharing our traditions with future generations. And we know that these values aren't just ours, they're Montana values. When we deliver for Indian country, we deliver for all of Montana. And so I want to walk and talk you through some of our legislation today. some of the Montana Indian Caucus priorities for the session, as well as our shared commitment to the quality in education that we think actually impacts and benefits everybody in Montana. First, honoring our children. Last session, the legislature passed landmark legislation to enshrine the Indian Child Welfare Act into state law. This law has kept Indian families together and ensured that Indian children are able to learn and hold their culture and traditions and keep them within their family and their communities. Unfortunately, this law expired, and we hope to pass this legislation and continue it going forward. We know that the Montana Indian Child Welfare Act is what we call the gold standard for protecting children and keeping families together. And reauthorizing this legislation just isn't good for Montana Indians, it's good for Montana, and the Montana Indian Caucus is dedicated to getting it across the finish line. As far as health care, American Indians and Indian country face unique health care needs. For decades, the state of Montana and DPHHS have recognized that our tribal communities needed a seat at the table in our state's health policy. And you can go and look at all of the statistics that have showed that Native people, for example, live on average of 20 years less than their peers here in Montana. So there's a great need for health care in our communities and all across Montana. Another issue that we want to take up this session is the tribal health manager seat. Unfortunately, that position last session was removed from the state, a position in the state. And so we want to make sure we come back this session and put that back into place. American Indian Voices and tribal consultation protect the interests of Indian country. They also improve state government. And whether it's healthcare policy or fish and wildlife or natural resources, we believe this position is important for Indian people and all Montanans. And Senator Susan Weber will be carrying a bill this session to restore that position and return that valuable voice and consultant to state government. Furthermore, the importance of renewing the Montana Medicaid program cannot be understated in Indian country. As Rep. Howell has already touched on this at length, American Indians and our reservation communities are impacted profoundly by this bipartisan policy. And so I want to be very clear that if we fail to reauthorize Montana's Medicaid program, Indian country will suffer, and people will probably die in Montana. And we believe that people all across the state of Montana will suffer as well. So we don't believe it's something that we can let not get past this session. It has to get done. Additionally, we want to increase law enforcement resources to improve our response to missing and murdered Indigenous persons crisis that we've continued to see in Montana. We've made some strides on that front, but the statistics are still very high, and our work isn't done on that front. We know that improving missing investigations for missing persons on reservations improves investigations everywhere. So we'll be bringing some bills to allocate more funding towards missing person investigations and to continue to raise awareness for this crisis across our state. And our work makes sure that no one is forgotten and no search ends before our friends and family members come home. A final note on the Montana American Indian Caucus's priorities for this session is the work of Senator Jonathan Windyboy to preserve and pass Indian languages and keep our Indian language program going in the state. Language is obviously deeply tied to our culture and to preserving our native tongues and is key to preserving our native culture in Montana, and I believe the culture of Montana as well. So we stand with Senator Windyboy in continuing his work to fund and promote the Indian language program in Montana and make sure Montanans have the opportunity to learn and pass on these languages and these traditions to our grandkids and our future generations. Now regarding education, this is a big one for our caucus, the Democratic caucus, our Indian caucus, and I think all of Montana. All Montana students, we believe, deserve a high quality education. And in order to do that, obviously our schools need adequate funding. Montana Democrats will be working to help teachers and schools and students this session. We'll be working to reform the ways in which our school funding formulas work to ensure the school funding actually keeps up with inflation not just arbitrary formulas in state law, and to increase A and B amounts across the board. When Montanans first set up the state lottery, we were told, all of Montana was told that these funds would actually go to education. That didn't happen. The legislature has failed to follow through on that promise. And so Montana Democrats will move legislation that finally puts those dollars to work where they're supposed to belong, helping kids learn and teachers teach. We know that kids learn best when their stomachs are full. It's past time that we eliminate co-pays for school lunches, and we have Representative Romano who will be bringing a bill to do just that. Just as literacy is a core skill our kids need to learn and succeed, early math education is critical for setting our children up for success in both their future education and careers. Senator Smith will be bringing a bill, I think Senator Smith's right over there, a bill to improve our after-school programs, helping working families make ends meet with childcare and providing opportunities for children as well. And finally, none of this is possible without our teachers. And for far too long, Montana has faced challenges recruiting, retaining, and supporting good teachers, good educators in Montana. And so we'll be working to renew the successful Grow Your Own program, which helps rural and tribal schools train educators from within their communities. And we also want to work to implement a program that gives our new teachers mentorship opportunities from their experienced peers. And so outside of that, obviously there's things that we're going to be keeping an eye on. We want to ensure that we have fair elections in Montana, keeping an eye on voter suppression laws that we think not only impact our Indian communities, but all of Montana. Obviously, the Indian caucus still stands unified in passing Indigenous Peoples Day this session and making sure that we have an opportunity for people to choose whether they want to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day in Montana this in the future. So I've covered a lot of ground today, speaking not just about how Montana Democrats will continue our work for American Indians, but about how this work is beneficial for each and every person in the state of Montana. And I'm excited for our work and to be here, work in this legislative session. And to finish off, I want to hand the floor over to our great leader, State Senator Pat Flowers.
Thank you, Shane, Senator Morjo. So good to see you all. Welcome. Here we are. It always feels like the first day of school. Everybody's got their new book bags. Our shoes are shined. Look at that tie that Representative Peter Strand is wearing today. Fantastic. We love it. Sorry for the shout out, Peter, but it just looks so good. It has to be recognized. Welcome to the press. Here we go again. I'm so glad you're all here to shine a bright light on what we do. It's so important to all Montanans. And I just want to say good morning, Montana. Here we are for you today to do the good work of the 69th legislative session. I'm Pat Flowers. I represent Senate District 31. I'm also serving as a Democratic leader in the state Senate. Restoring freedom, fairness, and affordability are the forefront of our agenda in this session. We know that putting Montanans first starts with fair taxes. Rising property taxes, frankly, are a barrier at this point to home ownership and are forcing Montanans out of their homes. A lot of us knocked on doors this past session, and I'm sure talked to retired Montanans who are having that experience and trying to find a way to stay in their homes with these taxes. If you work hard, you should be able to afford to live here. That's kind of a bottom line. And if you have kids who are adult age, you know the struggles they are facing. I have 3 that live in my hometown, and they're all struggling to get in a home, pay their bills, and I think that same thing is true for young families across the state. If you worked hard all your life and you're here in Montana and you wanted to retire in Montana, you should be able to stay in your home. You shouldn't have to worry about whether you're going to have enough on your limited income to pay rising property taxes. That should not be a worry that our retired Montanans are facing. These massive property tax hikes were not a surprise. For those of you who were here in the last session, we knew that these were coming, and we had several proposals for long-term property tax relief. All those were killed by the Republican supermajority. Despite our repeated warnings about this property tax disaster that was coming, for more than a year prior to the last session, we had those warnings, and despite that, the Republican supermajority let it happen. Montanans are strapped on this issue, and solutions are overdue. Every day that we fail to deliver for Montanans on this very clear need, the problem grows. It had years to fester under Republican leadership, and it's time we address it now. This session, Democrats are bringing proposals that will cut the taxable value of primary residences with a homestead exemption. We're going to create a fair property tax rate that benefits middle-class homeowners and ensures that wealthy folks and big corporations are paying their fair share. We're going to create a tax credit to ensure long-term affordability and help renters as well as homeowners handle the cost of rising property taxes. We're referring to that as a housing fairness tax credit that Representative Carlin is carrying. We're committed to doing everything we can to address the outrageous increases in property taxes. You can count on us to fight tooth and nail to make sure that everyday Montanans, working Montanans, get some tax relief. They need it. Montana Democrats also stand with working Montanans to make sure they get a fair shake in a broader sense in today's economy, so they're able to support their families and afford to live in this great state of ours. Many of the policies we've been talking about today, from Medicaid to housing affordability, are critical to working folks. They all add up to the bills that we have to pay at the end of the day, at the end of the month. There are a few proposals that are really front and center on affordability that haven't been mentioned yet. First I wanted to mention was Senator Derek Harvey has been working on a bill that will make sure that Montanans have access to paid family leave when they need it to take care of family members, welcome a new child into their families, or face other emergencies. I have the good fortune to have a now almost 8-week-old new grandson, my first, which I'm thrilled about. And fortunately, my daughter works for a company that has that type of family medical leave. And I can't imagine what it would be like if she would have had to go back to work 2 weeks after this little guy was born. It would have been tragic, and I think every mother and father deserves that opportunity. Senator Harvey's bill will also make sure that small businesses do not face the tough financial decisions to provide this right to their employees. So this is a way to support small businesses so they can provide that opportunity for their employees. As we all feel the weight of inflation, we can't afford to leave our workers behind, obviously. They're the heart and soul of our economy. Representative Kelly Cornum will bring a bill to make sure that every Montanan is paid a living wage that allows them to live and work in their communities. Seems pretty basic to me. Thank you, Representative Cornum, for bringing that. For years now, working Montana families have struggled to find affordable child care. That's still a problem. Democrats made some substantial gains in the last session and will bring more solutions in the coming 4 months. Finally, from the era of the Copper Kings to the present day, Montana's unions have fought to make sure that our workers have safe working conditions and fair pay. I can promise you today that Montana Democrats will hold the line against every attempt to undermine the rights of workers, to unionize, and the rights of unions to fight for their workers. While those are our priorities, we know that fighting for freedom, fairness, and affordability will require us to take a stance on other important issues as well. We're going to fight to keep politics out of our court system. When our courts are attacked, our Constitution is at risk, and the rights and freedoms that we all enjoy in that Constitution hang in the balance, and we cannot take this lightly. We know this is coming. We're going to fight tirelessly to stop the Republican attempts to undermine our court system, and I hope you'll all stand with me on that. I'm sure you will. We're going to invest in our kids' education and Montana's future. It's the foundation for this state. We have to be able to educate our kids through our public school system, and we're going to fight to make sure that's well funded and that our teachers are well paid. And as Senator Morjo alluded to, we're going to honor tribal sovereignty and protect the health, privacy, and personal freedoms that we all enjoy. We're going to continue to put Montanans first, and that means fighting for freedom, fairness, and affordability. And with that, we'll get our Montana back on track. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go ahead and open this up to any Q&A, and I'm going to help direct questions to where they should go. Pull it down. Is that better? All right. Anyone? I don't see any hands. We're good. Good? Are you sure? Are you sure? Okay. All right, wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.